The night the insult fell like a blade, it cut through steam and clattering plates and landed on a man who had learned to survive without flinching, yet still felt everything. The restaurant glowed with money and impatience, with glass walls reflecting a city that never waited for anyone. In that light stood a single father in a fraying apron, balancing exhaustion and hope on one aching spine, when a powerful voice reduced him to trash with the careless certainty of someone used to being obeyed. The words did not echo, but they stayed, sinking into the floorboards, into the man's chest, into the quiet corner of his life where he stored every reason to keep going. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Bright Hearts. Stories like this are built on the faith that small goodness can still change big lives. The man's name was Daniel, though in the restaurant he was known only by the rhythm of his steps and the careful way he held plates as if they were promises. He had once held bigger things, years ago, before loss taught him how quickly foundations crumble. His wife's laughter still lived in the space between his breaths, a memory softened by time but sharpened by responsibility. When she died, the world did not pause to offer condolences. It handed him a toddler with a fever, a stack of bills, and the quiet terror of becoming both mother and father overnight. Daniel learned to cook meals with one hand while rocking a crib with the other, learned to sleep in minutes stolen between alarms, learned to turn grief into fuel. He sold his old car, moved into a smaller place, and took the night shifts others avoided, because the night paid more and asked fewer questions. The restaurant was one of those places where the ceiling lights were designed to flatter faces that never worked a day like his. It was the kind of place investors liked to be seen, where deals were whispered over steak knives and egos were fed before dessert. Daniel had memorized every corner, every shortcut between tables, every unspoken rule of invisibility. He knew how to vanish when a guest waved too sharply, how to absorb impatience without letting it spill onto the floor. His son, Lucas, waited at home with a neighbor who watched him after school, waiting for the late-night knock that meant Dad was back. Daniel counted tips in his head like prayers, each one a step closer to a future that did not scare him so much. That night, the man who snapped carried authority like a tailored suit. He was a CEO whose name traveled faster than his footsteps, whose decisions moved markets and lives with a signature. He was used to rooms bending toward him, to service that anticipated his needs before he named them. When something went wrong, when a plate arrived a minute later than expected, he responded the way power sometimes does when it forgets its reflection. The insult came fast and final, a dismissal of worth delivered in public, as if the room itself needed to understand who mattered and who did not. Daniel felt the familiar heat behind his eyes and the instinct to bow his head. He had learned that dignity could be quiet, that survival sometimes meant swallowing words you deserved to say. He apologized with the professionalism he had honed, fixed the problem, and moved on, though something inside him tightened. He carried the words with him to the kitchen, where stainless steel mirrored his tired face, and he reminded himself of Lucas asleep with a stuffed dinosaur tucked under his chin. He reminded himself why he endured. What the CEO did not know was that Daniel's invisibility had been a choice, not a fate. Years earlier, before grief rearranged his life, Daniel had been an analyst with a mind for patterns and patience. He had learned early that slow growth, tended carefully, could outlast flashy leaps. When his wife was still alive, they had made a promise to build something steady for their child, something that would not evaporate if luck turned. Daniel invested modestly at first, choosing companies with values that aligned with his own, reinvesting dividends, reading reports late at night after bedtime stories. When tragedy struck, he did not cash out. He let the investments grow quietly, untouched, a seed he refused to dig up even when bills pressed hard. One of those investments happened to be in the CEO's company, a small stake at first, then larger as the years passed and the company soared. Daniel never spoke of it, not even to friends. He had learned that some things were safer when they stayed small and silent. The restaurant resumed its hum. Plates came and went. Daniel refilled glasses and folded napkins, his body moving on autopilot while his mind replayed the moment. He wondered how many times people like him had been flattened by words from people like that, and how many never recovered their balance. He wondered what Lucas would learn about the world from watching him. He wondered whether dignity was something you could teach without ever naming it. Change began the way it often does, quietly and without ceremony. A week later, Daniel received an email he almost deleted, assuming it was another update buried among bills and advertisements.